We begin this episode with the Red Keep in a frenzy. It's clear that everyone has been made aware of the assassination of Prince Jaehaerys. The King's Guard have the dogs out and are searching for the two individuals that committed the heinous act. Suddenly, we cut to Alicent grieving the loss of her grandchild. She tells Otto that she feels the gods are punishing her. He ensures her that's not the case and begins to explain the opportunities they have in front of them due to this tragedy. Next, we see Aegon rightfully being furious in the small council room. He angrily accuses Rhaenyra of ordering the assassination on his son. Otto and the rest of the council informs him that a king could have many enemies, and this could have been anyone who may disapprove of the crown. Aegon rightfully asks Sir Christian about his whereabouts. When the incident happened, Sir Christian simply responds he was bedded. Otto suggests to Aegon that a royal funeral be held in Jaehaerys' honor. Aegon refuses to agree to this idea and expresses he doesn't want his son paraded in the streets amongst the commoners. Larys enters the small council room and informs Aegon that an individual was apprehended at the city gates, with Jaehaerys' severed head in a bag. Aegon jumps up, walks towards Larys, and declares he'll kill the murderer himself. Otto suggests they get information from the suspect before executing him. Now we cut to Helaena, obviously still grieving the loss of her son. Alicent informs her they must ride through King's Landing for the funeral of Jaehaerys. Helaena tells Alicent she doesn't want to. Alicent explains they must, and it gives them the opportunity to get close to the public. And Helaena gave Alicent one of the most realist responses. She simply replies, I don't want them to be close. I don't know them. I love Helaena for this response. I'm not fond of being near people I don't know either. We then cut to Alicent and Helaena in a carriage, leaving the Red Keep in the funeral motorcade. Next, we see Larys in the dungeon with Blood. Larys unpacks his torture tools, and Blood quickly lets Larys know Daemon Targaryen hired him to kill the young prince. I totally wasn't expecting this guy to rat Daemon out so fast. Aegon enters the room and proceeds to beat him in the head with a metal object. We cut back to the funeral motorcade, making its way through King's Landing. Helaena looks visibly uncomfortable. They actually show Jaehaerys' corpse with his head reattached. The citizens are grieving with the queen as they continue to ride through the city. One gentleman yells, "This is Queen Rhaenyra's doing." I wonder if he was paid to say that, so the people can turn against Rhaenyra. Because Otto seems to be determined to get some good PR for Team Green. The carriage suddenly gets caught in a pothole, and Helaena begins to panic and seemingly goes into some type of trance. Back at Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's council informs her of what happened to Prince Jaehaerys, and the public thinks she's responsible for it. Appalled, Rhaenyra rejects this notion and calls out the ridiculousness of the accusation. Princess Rhaenys locks eyes with Daemon, and suddenly Rhaenyra looks at him as well. We then cut to Rhaenyra and Daemon having a private conversation, and she confronts him by asking him if he had anything to do with the assassination of Jaehaerys. He tells her he sent the hired men after Aemon only. Rhaenyra calls him out on his bullshit, and they have an intense argument about why Viserys didn't trust that he would be a good king, how his actions hurt her cause, and that she can no longer trust him. She sends Daemon away, but I'm going to assume he's going to make sure Harrenhal supports her claim to the throne. Baela enters the room, and Rhaenyra instructs her to take her dragon Moondancer and monitor King's Landing. Baela agrees and then asks about her father Daemon. Rhaenyra tells Baela he must go his own path. Back at the Red Keep, we see Aegon walking towards Helaena. He briefly stops, but continues walking past her in silence. Both of them are obviously grieving the loss of their son, so I guess they didn't quite know what to say to each other. However, I noticed Team Green isn't very affectionate with each other. Next, we cut to a scene of Rhaenyra playing with her two young children. Suddenly, like Helena, she seemingly goes into a trance or deep thought. We then cut to a servant drawing a bath for Alicent. After the servant leaves, Alicent approaches Sir Christian and asks if he told anyone about their little hookups. He assures her he hasn't. Alicent closes the door and sulks in the tub. Afterwards, Sir Christian decides to be an asshole and grills Arik about his filthy cloak. And before Arik can leave the room, he asks him about his whereabouts during the night Jaehaerys was murdered. Arik quickly responds and said he was with the king, Aegon, guarding him in the throne room. Arik then asked Sir Christian, "Where were you?" Of course, we know why he can't honestly answer that question, so Sir Christian quickly deflects and talks Arik into assassinating Rhaenyra to essentially show his allegiance to Team Green, and Arik foolishly agrees. We then see Baela and Jace having a nice bonding moment while she's practicing shooting her crossbow. She admits that sometimes she hates her father Daemon. It seems like he barely interacts with his girls, so who can blame her? She then asks Jace about his fathers, and he talks about Rhaenyra and Sir Harwin Strong so fondly. Next, we see Aemond curled up in a fetal position and cuddling with a lady of the night. He confesses how he didn't mean to kill Lucerys and how he believes Daemon sees him as a threat because he tried to have him assassinated. It is clear he is getting the affection from this woman that he clearly can't get from Alicent. In the next scene, we see the blacksmith we saw back in episode 1, conversing with his wife. While he's checking on his sick child, she then pours him a bowl of soup and informs him she had to travel 2 hours to buy food, and she paid 3 times as much for it. Clearly, the citizens of King's Landing are experiencing inflation since the Valyrian fleet has been blocking the ports. He then tells her the king will pay in advance for the scorpions he's been producing for them. His wife simply asks when. I have a feeling the citizens are going to have a rebellion soon. We cut to Alan unpacking cargo on the docks. His handsome brother Adam greets and gives him a hug. I'm convinced these are Corlys's 2 illegitimate offspring. I wonder if he's going to tell Princess Rhaenys about these 2 adult children of his. Speaking of Rhaenys, we now see her and Corlys in bed discussing Daemon's departure. Rhaenys expresses she feels Daemon doesn't want to be controlled and may continue to have conflict with Rhaenyra. However, she and her dragon Meleys will be there for Rhaenyra. Next, we see Rhaenyra in the Dragonstone Library. She has her guard, Eric, bring Mysaria from her cell. Mysaria explains to Rhaenyra that Daemon promised her her freedom if she assisted him. She confesses that she only gave him 2 names, but she wishes she hadn't. Rhaenyra informs Mysaria that Daemon is gone. Both ladies begin to bond over experiencing the selfishness of Daemon. Mysaria tells Rhaenyra she can only hope that she honors her husband's promise. Rhaenyra has her guard escort Mysaria back to her cell. We then see Adam digging in the sand when suddenly he sees the dragon sea smoke flying above his head. I feel like this is foreshadowing something in the future. Adam doesn't have Targaryen blood, so I don't think he'll be able to bond with the dragon. We cut to the citizens of King's Landing, shockingly seeing all the rat catchers lifelessly hanging by their necks. Aegon clearly wanted to send a message to the citizens, but I also think this was overkill. I wish he hadn't killed Blood so he could have just killed Cheese instead of all the other rat catchers. Next, we see Otto Hightower storm into Aegon's room and begin to grill him about his actions. The actor who plays Otto was hilarious in the scene. He tells Aegon he just won the public sympathy with the funeral of Jaehaerys, and him hanging the rat catchers just squandered all of that goodwill he garnered for him and his family. Aegon quickly responds, I wish to spill blood, not ink. Otto continues to go on and rant about Aegon's actions, so Christian interrupts and tells Otto to be careful how he speaks to his king. Otto quickly yells that King is my grandson and a fool. Otto, hit below the belt, and alludes to his disapproval of Aegon being on the throne. He attempts to leave, but before he could exit the door, Aegon orders him to take off his badge and give it to Sir Christian, and tells him he will have a hand with an iron fist. Otto removes his badge, throws it to Sir Christian, and calmly tells his grandson he will regret this. Rhaenyra decides to free Mysaria and instructs Sir Eric to escort her to the docks to a boat that's leaving for Pentos. Mysaria bows and thanks her. As Mysaria is walking towards the docks, she sees Sir Auric, twin brother of Eric, walking to Dragonstone. She then asks her transportation to wait for a minute. I'm guessing she warned the other guards about Sir Auric's arrival. We then see Rhaenyra washing her face and getting ready for bed. Simultaneously, we see Sir Auric has successfully infiltrated Dragonstone and her sleeping quarters. He enters the room and pulls out his sword and walks towards Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra, with a look of confusion on her face, asks what's the meaning of this. Before Auric gets close to Rhaenyra, Eric bursts into the room and the two brothers begin to fight intensely. Sir Eric comes out on top, but kills himself because he clearly couldn't live with the fact that he killed his brother. This was such a good scene that had great fight choreography and some emotional lines between the two brothers. Sir Christian selfishly ordered Auric to do this without thinking of the consequences of his decision. He really escalated this conflict between the two factions. Next, we see Otto conversing with Alicent and expresses his frustration with Aegon and Sir Christian's lack of foresight. He then informs Alicent that he's heading back to Old Town, home of the Hightowers, to continue to mentor her son Darren, who we haven't met yet. Alicent confesses that she has sinned. Otto immediately tells her he doesn't want to hear it. He obviously had enough of everyone for that day. Afterwards, we see Alicent walk in on Aegon crying and still processing the loss of his son. I was hoping Alicent would be a mother and comfort him, but nope, she turns around and walks back outside the door. As I stated earlier, Team Green isn't very affectionate with each other. She finds her Christian waiting for her in her bedroom. She walks towards him and begins to smack him repeatedly. He then pushes her up against the wall and begins to get the party started with our hypocritical naughty girl Alicent. The episode fades to black. This was a really good episode that had so much good dialogue between the characters and a few good shocking moments. It reminded me of how good the original Game of Thrones series was when it first began. This episode also had a lot of setup for the next episode. I can't wait to see what goes down with Daemon at Harrenhal. Also, I'm looking forward to seeing Baela and her dragon Moondancer. Lastly, I would like to see how Rhaenyra will retaliate for the attempted assassination on her life by Team Green. Overall, I'm rating this episode a solid A. If you enjoyed this review, please like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you for the next episode.